Organizing Maniacs, and we have been organizing our manuals and electronics. So I've become a huge fan of this product. This is a over-the-door shoe bag. I've been using this around the house in a lot of different places. So I'm gonna take a few minutes to organize some of my everyday used cords and electronics to easy access. And I'm gonna use behind my office door. It's a place where once the door is open, it's pretty tucked away, so I don't have to look at the cords all the time. But when I'm running out the door, it's fairly easy for me to pick up whatever I need and run. So give me a few minutes and you can see what I came up with. Okay, so that was probably a 5-minute project. So I set it up.
3 minutes.
I inserted 3 minutes. So I inserted some of the things that I have, and obviously as I start moving around, I'm gonna find other things. Look, I see my iPhone earbuds, so I'm gonna put those in there as well. So as you go around and you start collecting more stuff, there's lots of room. You can go as extreme as like labeling some of the stuff so you know what it belongs with. This is plastic, so it's pretty easy to adhere and peel them off. So we're gonna go outside and show you what we came up with and see and talk about how we're gonna clean some of that stuff up and how we're gonna get rid of it in a environmentally friendly sort of organizing way. And then we'll be done with our manuals.